The creator of Claude Code, Boris Cherny, recently said on Lenny's podcast that coding is largely solved. He hasn't manually written a single line of code since November of 2025. Everything he ships is written by AI. It's a bold claim, but here's the part that caught my attention. Anthropic ran a building competition, 13,000 people applied, 500 were selected, and a personal injury attorney took first place. Not first place among non-engineers, first place overall. A lawyer beat 500 builders, 500 engineers. So what's actually happening here? And why are people who have never opened up terminal suddenly the ones driving all of this? That's the topic on today's Tech Thaumaturge. Unless you've been avoiding AI like the plague for the last few months, you've probably seen people talking about Claude Code. The Wall Street Journal ran a piece calling it Claude Pilled, describing everyone from executives to regular people going on Claude benders over the holidays, using it to book theater tickets, file taxes, and automate their personal finances, and any other projects you could think of. This isn't a niche developer tool anymore. Claude Code now accounts for over 4% of all public GitHub commits. It hit $2.5 billion in annual revenue, run faster than any other software company in history. And the most interesting part, a huge chunk of that growth is coming from people who are not engineers. Boris Cherny made a prediction on the podcast that stuck with me. He said that by the end of this year, the title software engineer starts disappearing. It gets replaced by builder. The reasoning is that everyone on his team already codes. His product manager codes, his designer codes, his finance person codes, the engineering manager codes. They're all using Claude Code to ship real work. He compared this moment to the printing press. Before the printing press, about 1% of the population could read. Scribes held a monopoly on literacy. Within 200 years of the press being introduced, though, 70% of people were literate. Many of those scribes became writers and authors as the market for written work exploded. He's doing the same thing with programming. The skill isn't going away, it's becoming accessible to everyone. And the people who understand their domain, whether that's law or medicine or marketing, suddenly have a huge advantage because they know the problem better than any engineer ever could. That's exactly why a lawyer won the hackathon. He understood building permits in California better than any engineer could. Claude Code handled the rest. So let's talk about what's changed in the last 6 months. 3 things converged to make this moment possible. First, the model got significantly better. If you've used AI in the past year, you've noticed that it's gotten okay, and then better, and then almost incredibly good overnight. That's because the models have been improving significantly with every turn and every new iteration. Opus 4.6 launched with a 1 million token context window and dramatically improved planning. What this means for non-engineers is reliability. You need the tool to work the first time because you can't debug it when it breaks. Opus 4.6 handles sustained, complex tasks without falling apart midway like previous models may have. Second, Anthropic launched Cowork. Think of it as Claude Code for people who don't want to touch the terminal. It's a desktop interface where you point it at your files, you describe what you need, and go. Built by 4 engineers in 10 days using Claude Code itself, it handles spreadsheets, presentations, documents, and connects to tools like Notion or Asana instantly. Third, the skills marketplace exploded. Skills are just plain language instructions sets that teach Claude how to do specific tasks. There are now over 7,000 of them, pre-built templates for marketing, HR, design, operations, legal, finance, etc. You install one and it just works. You don't have to build from scratch, you build from almost done. So let's talk about terminal. Terminal isn't scary anymore. For decades, the terminal was that barrier. It was a black screen with a blinking cursor that was separated technical from non-technical people. Only the coders used it. Here's the shift though. AI made the scary part irrelevant. You don't memorize commands. You describe what you want in plain English, and Claude Code executes it. The terminal is just the container for a conversation now. You don't need to know ls, dir, mkdir, etc. And here's something that people don't talk about enough. Claude Code itself teaches you the terminal. What does this command do? Explains it if you just ask it that question. You can just ask, what just happened? And it walks you through. The guide is literally sitting there right in front of you. And modern terminals, like Warp, take it even further. Visual blocks instead of scrolling text, built-in AI assistants, and interfaces that look like it was made in the last decade are incredible. So what are non-engineers actually building then? Well, the stories coming out of this are remarkable, and something I hadn't expected to see in this career. Austin Lau, a growth marketer at Anthropic with 0 coding experience, built a Figma plugin that generates up to 100 ad variants per batch. took a process that was 30 minutes per ad down to 30 seconds. He ran Anthropic's entire paid marketing operation solo for nearly 10 months. His advice? You don't need to know how to code. All you need is the ability to explain your challenge clearly and concisely. Kieran Flanagan, SVP of Marketing at HubSpot, built 11 interconnected Claude Code skills and launched 34 landing pages overnight from a single directive he gave at 10 p.m. Chris Blattman, a political economist from the University of Chicago, describes himself as someone who has never written a single line of code. He discovered Claude Code in January of 2026 and within a month had built an AI workflow system that other research groups started forking for their own use. And then there's this hackathon. A cardiologist in Belgium built a diagnostic tool, a road inspector in Uganda automated inspection workflows, a personal injury attorney in California built a building permit compliance system. None of them are engineers. Boris mentions a concept called latent demand. He watches how people misuse or creatively repurpose Claude Code and then tells him what to do next. He uses that as a guideline for what to build and what to improve. People started using it to recover wedding photos, monitor tomato plants, comb through museum archives, automate Slack messages. None of these were planned use cases when Claude Code was first built. That observation led directly to co-work. He saw that non-engineers weren't waiting for permission to use the tool. They were already using it. They just needed a better door in. If you're not technical and you're curious, here's how you can start using Claude Code yourself. First, use the desktop app. You don't need the terminal. Open Claude Code desktop app and click on the Code tab and start describing what you need. That's it. Second, you can install a pre-built skill for your role. These are skills for marketing, product management, design operations, research, etc. Find the one that matches what you do and install it. Think of it like installing an app on your phone. I'll periodically update the description below with some of my favorite skills that may be relevant to you. So check it out over time and I'll refresh them. 3, start with a real problem, not a tutorial. The fastest way to learn is to describe something that's actually annoying you at work. For example, I spend 2 hours every Monday compiling this report is a much better starting point than teach me how to code or how to do this thing. 4, ask it to explain everything. When Claude Code does something you don't understand, ask why, it will explain. You'll learn more in a week of building real things than in a month of courses. And do this, don't just accept that it worked. Understand why. Boris Cherny said something on that podcast that I keep coming back to. He said, I've never had this much joy day to day in my work. The creator of the tool is having the most fun because the tool does the tedious part and he gets to be creative. That's the real story here. It's not that non-engineers can suddenly code. It's that the barrier between having the idea and then building it is disappearing. The question used to be, do you know how to code? Now the question is, do you know what to build? If you're curious about Claude Code, but you felt like it wasn't for you because you're not an engineer, I'd encourage you to reconsider. The people winning hackathons and building remarkable things aren't career developers. They're lawyers and doctors and marketers who understand their domain deeply and finally have a tool that lets them act on that understanding. So what would you build if coding wasn't the bottleneck? Tell me in the comments below.